It is time. My opinion on the best Cosmere reading order. So, as I said in the last video, the Cosmere is an interconnected universe of 6 different series, and this is the order that I think you should read those series in, because they're great. The first one is Elantris, and the reason... real quick, I'm breaking this video into 2 parts. The first one is going to be for people who want to get into the Cosmere, and my second one is people who've already read the books and my defense for my opinion of this reading order. Alright, so clearly I can't explain things without previously having explained, without having a plan to explain them. Part 1 of this video will be spoiler-free to give you the information you need to jump into the Cosmere, and the second part will be full of spoilers as I defend my reading order. And so, yeah, if you haven't read the Cosmere, stick around until I tell you to leave later in the video. But the first one I believe you should read is Elantris, and the reason you should read Elantris first is because it has very few Cosmere elements. What Cosmere elements it does have go out of the book instead of come into it. And so it's a really good introduction to Brandon's writing style and the kind of quality of book you'll be reading. It's also the first book he ever published, so it's not his best, but it's also very good. Do not let me discourage that. But you should start with Elantris because it's very simple, and then move on to Mistborn. Now, Mistborn is one of the 2 big franchises within the Cosmere. Like, they're all interconnected, but the biggest ones are Mistborn and Stormlight Archive. And so this is Mistborn Era 1. There are 2 eras of Mistborn currently written. And I believe you should read the second Mistborn era first, because it starts introducing more complex elements into the Cosmere. You start to understand how the magic works through the entire universe, because each book has a different way that the magic works, but the overall connecting points start to be explained here. Next, you should read, this is White Sands, and the reason I put White Sands here is because Mistborn Era 1 and 2, there's a 300-year time gap, so you need something to break them up, and White Sands is a very easy read, not a whole lot of Cosmere elements. No, there's 0 Cosmere elements that go out, or there's 0 Cosmere elements that go in, but there's a pretty big one that comes out, so you do need to read it before Mistborn Era 2, actually, to properly wrap your head around it. And so this is the second one, and it is a graphic novel. It is 3 graphic novels as opposed to regular novels, and that's why I put it in here, so you can get used to Sanderson's writing style before having it shaken up for you, because it's his writing style, and then someone else's, illustration and convert it into blah, 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 blah. So you read this second, or third. This is the third one. And then Mistborn Era 2. And Mistborn Era 2... is, so this has a lot of elements that will become important in the Stormlight Archives. Like, we're kind of making that build up. It explains, it does more explaining with hemalurgy and other elements that you'll come to understand better. And then there is one book I forgot to put on here, The Arcanum Unbounded. The Arcanum Unbounded has a lot of mini-stories, and just read almost the entire thing at this point. In between Bands of Mourning and Warbreaker, you should read Mistborn. You should read The Arcanum Unbounded. And so it's a bunch of short stories. It has a short story for Elantris. It has a few short stories that take place in Mistborn Era 1. It does have White Sands in there, but it's just like the opening page. You would have already read that, so you can skip over that. And then there's actually 2 stories from the second that become important to the second Mistborn era. There's only 1 story, but the other one is meant to be read after Bands of Mourning. And then skip Edge Dancer. Again, getting my point across improvised did not work. So you skip Edge Dancer until you've read the Stormlight Archives, and you read Edge Dancer right after Words of Radiance. Right after Words of Radiance, you read Edge Dancer, That's where it is chronologically in the Stormlight archives. And you skip Edge Dancer until then because it is a Stormlight book and you'll be majorly spoiled, but read the rest of the Arcanum Unbounded right after this. And then, well, I'll let me explain, which will be at the end of the Arcanum Unbounded. But that is important, is read all of this first. Read Elantris and Mistborn Era 1 and White Sands and Mistborn Era 2. Then read the Arcanum Unbounded, because the Arcanum Unbounded has elements that you probably won't understand until you've finished all of this. And also, don't let me intimidate you with this list. You can read them in whatever order they come. I started with the Stormlight Archives, which was not the best choice I've ever made, but it wasn't bad. I still understood all of this. I understand it enough to rearrange the reading order I would have done. And you can find other videos where people have different reading orders. It's not super important. It's not a super complicated universe, but this is, in my opinion, the best reading order. And so, Mistborn Era 2, Arcanum Unbounded, and then Warbreaker. So Warbreaker is, again, fairly simple, Cosmere-wise. All of the elements go out, but there is a big element that goes out. And now you have almost completed the Cosmere. You'll have one series left. The big papa, the big one, Sanderson's Legacy, in my opinion. The Stormlight Archives. Now, the reason you save the Stormlight Archives till the end is for two reasons. One, the Stormlight Archives combines every element you would have just read. It has elements from Elantris, Mistborn, or certain elements from Mistborn. This explains how shards work. There's elements from this book. That one has a magic sword that enters Roshar. The second reason you should leave this till last is each one of these books is upwards of 1,000 pages. I think starting with this one, they're upwards of 1,500 pages. So they're big, and you're going to want to be in love with this series. But if you do start with the Stormlight Archives, you'll fall in love over here at The Way of Kings. Like, you'll have no trouble getting through them. But The Way of Kings does start slow, so I recommend you read all the other ones and really know what this man can do and what he eventually pulls off here. It starts to get really good just here. And the ending of Way of Kings is really good. It just starts kind of rough, and the rest of it is just perfect. So, this is the end of the part for people who have not read the Cosmere. That is my reading order, and now I'm going to move on. Okay, so now at this part of the video, I'm going to. Oh, if you're still here, leave. If you have not read all the Cosmere books, or if you don't care, unless you've read all the books or don't care about spoilers, leave at this point, because I'm going to be defending this reading order. Okay, good. Now, the reason I started with Elantris is fairly simple. So, Scions are, it's pretty much the only reason I started with Elantris, because you need to have read everything else, you have needed to read everything else before you're ready for the Stormlight Archives, because context is everything, and you'll miss some pretty big context if you skip straight to Stormlight Archives like I did. I missed a lot of stuff. But you have to start somewhere, and Elantris is a very easy read as far as Sanderson goes, and obviously the Scions need to be introduced for Stormlight, but really it's just simply a good place to start. It's a good introduction to what this man can pull off, and his skills in writing with his beautiful characters, and just an introduction to the magic system. And the next, you read Mistborn next, because, Mistborn is the big series, and I put in White Sands here to break it up, and Warbreaker right before it, so the Sword Nimi is in there. And so Mistborn needed a place to be, and you should get to the big ones right at first. And Mistborn Era 1 and Era 2, all of Mistborn is very prominent, and so this will obviously introduce you to Kelsier, which will eventually link to the Ghost Bloods, and you'll understand a bit how shards work by the stuff that happens in Heroes of Ages, and Vin is Brandon Sanderson's best work outside of the Stormlight Archives. I believe Dalinar is his best work ever. But Vin is a very close second. And then White Sands goes here because, I said it in the earlier section, you need something to break up Era 1 and Era 2, in my opinion. Something in between there so that your mind can comprehend the time break properly. It's not like it's that hard. I'm just trying to make this as easy as possible. Everything needs somewhere to be. And so White Sands goes right there. And it is important for Stormlight Archives because you have Chrysala, obviously, and then the sand that shows up in Stormlight Archive. And then the second Mistborn era, now that you've had a break, you can introduce yourself to, Kelsier's revival and more about everything. Like, there's a lot of world-hopping elements in here, like, probably the most out of any non-Stormlight Cosmere book. And then, as I said, Arcanum Unbounded in between here, because Arcanum Unbounded has no Warbreaker, and I think it would just be good, kind of. You would get to read the secret history for Bands of Mourning. You would understand what Kelsier's doing, why he would be alive, and you also just get the other cool stories. It helps you wrap around your head. It helps you wrap your head around the Cosmere one last time. And you do Warbreaker to introduce the final element of Vavina and Sword Nimi. And then the Stormlight Archives. And this is what we've been building to. Like, the Cosmere, or not the Cosmere, the Stormlight Archives has the most Cosmere elements, so it goes at the end, and all of the other books are placed where they are to help you better understand the Stormlight Archives. I don't really have much more to say. I'd like you guys to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What would you move? What would you... all of that stuff. If you guys have a video, if you guys have seen a video or have made a video or want to make a video on a better reading order, then let me know and I would watch it. And yeah, so thanks for watching this video, and like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I can't wait for the new Wax and Wane series, the new Mistborn Era 2 book, The Lost Metal. It's coming out next year sometime. We don't know exactly when. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for that. I hope all you guys are, because all you guys are cosmonauts at this point. And if you're not, well, you were warned. So yeah, like, subscribe, check back in, and I'll talk a bit more about the Cosmere when that book comes out. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.